Welcome to Module 1, Introduction to Quality and Quality Management. In this module, we'll take a look at what quality is all about, and also we'll take an initial dive into quality management and some of the philosophies and practices involved with that.
The learning objectives for this module are the following. Number one, we're going to assess the reasoning why quality is hard to define and measure. Next, we're going to examine the history of quality and the different eras of quality. Third, we'll discuss in intelligent conversation what quality management is and its importance. Next, we'll differentiate the viewpoints and approaches of the various key figures in the quality management movement. And finally, we'll define what quality is in terms of software and systems.
So now let's dive into Unit 1. Exactly what is quality? Before we study the subject of quality in any depth, we must be clear on what we mean by the term quality. When talking to others about quality, we must be sure that we have the same understanding of the term. A company did a survey of 86 firms, and they asked them the question, what is quality? And here are some of the responses. Eliminating waste, perfection, speed of delivery. The bottom line, it's different things to different people. So if we look at some of the definitions, a degree of excellence by the Oxford Dictionary. Fitness for purpose was popular by Dittman. The totality of features and characteristics that bear on the ability of a product or service to satisfy a given need. British Standards Institution. The total composite product and service characteristics of marketing, engineering, manufacturing, and maintenance through which the product and service will meet the expectations of the customer. There's a lot there. Conformance to requirements is what Crosby was all about. And then we have quality as a dynamic state associated with products, services, people, processes, and environments that meets or exceeds expectations and helps produce superior value. That last definition is an interesting and probably one that we'll take a little bit deeper dive into. From PMI's perspective, quality means the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills requirements. And if we take a look at ISO 9000, specifically the year 2005, third definition is the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills requirements. So in those two, they're somewhat similar. So we are getting some commonality now. But quality is very ambiguous. It really depends on who you ask and when. The general perception of quality often confuses quality with specification. According to this definition, we might be tempted to believe that a high specification car, say a Ferrari, is inherently of higher quality than a lower specification car, such as a Fiat. Duran taught us that quality, on the other hand, suggests that if both vehicles satisfy the purpose for which they were purchased, they can both be quality products. And a differentiation in quality cannot be assessed merely in terms of features that one product enjoys over the other. So again, quality is very ambiguous. It depends on who you ask and when. It may depend on the project. So one of the important things we'll learn in this class is when you want to define quality, you have to really engage the customer and see what their definition is. And it may be different for every project. In today's day and age, it doesn't seem to be enough to meet expectations. What if the customer doesn't even know they need something yet? Can you delight them if you are just meeting expectations? Our understanding of the word quality can and arguably should be associated with achieving or exceeding expectations, meeting requirements that the customer had not actually stipulated, but once offered become the expectation of everyone. And I ask the question, is this scope creep? In your project management essentials class, you learned that you needed to define scope in order to set a realistic budget and schedule. If you are exceeding expectations, are you adding scope in order to do that? Or should you just meet those expectations based on specifications? I think that's a question a lot of project managers need to struggle with. Okay. What does quality mean? And can you set your schedule and your budget based on the level of quality that you intend to implement? This is an interesting slide. It says quality is counter-entropic. It comes from the second law of thermodynamics that says things move naturally from a state of order to disorder. Okay. And kind of quality is the same way. Things don't get better on their own, they get worse. Quality is hard work. It is a result of deliberate management. So as project managers, again, what you learned in the Essentials course is managers have some of the greatest impact when it comes to quality management and the level of effort they put into it on a particular project. Here's a slide you should recognize from your Essentials course also. It talks about the triple constraint and how quality impacts time, cost, and scope. When quality is added to the mix as a fourth among equals, with one different, it affects other constraints, but it is never an object of trade-offs, never, or should not be. Quality products will affect scope. Quality processes will affect cost and schedule. But quality is not the fourth constraint because constraints are subject to trade-off, and a wise project manager never, ever trades off quality. So we've talked about what quality is. Let's talk about what quality is not. This slide addresses 3 myths about quality, and we have seen what quality is, so let's take a look at what quality is not. There are many misconceptions about quality. Although you may hear these often, but they are wrong-headed. Number 1, it's an expensive process. Not true. Later in the course, you will talk about Philip Crosby and his view that quality is free. Adding quality will result in benefits that pay back more than the initial cost. Expensive product. Not true again. Paying a higher price or more features does not necessarily indicate higher quality. For example, a gold Rolex watch costs more than a plastic digital watch, but is not necessarily better quality timepiece. In fact, it is not as good, accurate, and expensive, and in fact, it may not be as good or accurate as a lesser inexpensive watch. An expensive writing instrument made of exotic materials and precious metals may not write any better or more reliable than an inexpensive plastic ballpoint pen. And the third one's time consuming. Not true again. Doing something right the first time takes a lot less time than doing it over. Consider automotive recalls. Taken point Toyota and GM this last year. The old saying applies, there is never enough time to do it right, but always enough time to do it over. In the case of GM, we were talking about people's lives, and people lost their jobs over that. So let's take a look at the Goshen-Davis definition again. Quality is defined by the customer, and such will change over time, often in unpredictable ways. The key there is it may change over time. It's dynamic. What we define quality one week may change another week, and that's important. Quality is associated with creating customer value. Again, we're trying to meet the needs of the customer. A quality good or service meets or exceeds the whole range of customer expectations, some of which may be unspoken. So again, we must find out what those unspoken expectations are. That can be tricky. And as a complex concept, quality can only be addressed by the whole organization working together. It goes back to the whole culture of the organization and their philosophy towards quality. So This definition is a reasonable attempt to draw together the themes of a number of definitions of quality and create a unifying definition. The most noteworthy idea is the idea of dynamism, which means that quality may change over time. So what are the benefits of quality? Customer satisfaction, greater perceived value, reduced costs, less waste, efficient processes, better supplies, increased profits, better return, and finally, increased competitiveness. Which asks the question, what is quality management? If quality is the endpoint, then quality management is the approach and process for getting there. So what is that process? When you studied the PMBOK in the Essentials course, you talked about quality planning, quality control, quality assurance. Parts of the process, which all add up to quality management. Later on in the course, we'll study those and quality improvement in detail as part of this process. Quality management principles. There are 8 of them. So let's look at each one of these. And these are central to the practice of quality management. Customer focus. We need to become obsessive about understanding of our customers and the requirements and expectations. Strategic focus. Quality management must be a strategic undertaking. If companies survive and thrive through delivering value to their customers, they must treat this as a key strategic objective. Leadership focus. Nothing happens in any organization without commitment of leaders and their active driving of the strategy. Process focus. For too long, organizations have been obsessed with outcomes. Outcomes are driven the effective application of appropriate processes. Emphasis needs to be more from an assessment of outcome performance to the development and control of processes to deliver customer value. People focus. Quality management is fundamentally all about people. Not processes, but people. Scientific focus. Quality management is fundamentally based on the scientific method, which was by Skuhart and Dittman, Plan, Do, Study, Act. We'll learn more about that later. Where decisions are evaluated based on evidence and data, and these evaluations are in turn used to drive further iterations of action. Next, continual improvement, innovation, and learning. At the heart of quality management is dissatisfaction with the status quo. Process improvement in such an organization is not simply about responding to problems. It is about proactively seeking to learn about customers' processes and behaviors and to improve upon existing practices or to innovate in developing new markets, processes, and practices. And lastly, systems thinking. By integrating the key concepts and seeing the organization in a holistic way, we can create synergies between the elements of the thinking and deliver a whole which is much greater than the sum of the parts. Again, you learned a little bit about systems thinking in your Essentials course, focusing on the whole, the boundaries of the whole, breaking down the pieces, the difference between systems analysis and systems management. It's a big part of quality management. That brings us to the end of Unit 1. So what did we learn? We learned what quality is. We learned that there's lots of different definitions and it's very ambiguous. And as smart project managers, we need to engage the customer and see what their definition of quality is and try to meet or exceed their definition. And that may be different per project. It may be different per customer. It may change over time. And we also learned that project management has a great impact when it comes into quality management. Also, we took a dive into what quality management was all about and some of the key quality management principles. And in the next unit, we'll look at the history of quality.